I like to get some attention to people that are sort of in the shit, kind of nuts and bolts, making the projects, and a lot of the people in this space are coming at it from that angle. And a friend of mine, Rohan, is here, and another friend, Shilo, are here, and they're working on a really incredible project, actually a couple projects, but the main one they're working on right now is a really amazing project for Burning Man. And it's coming from a really incredible shared background that brings these two together. Rohan has a really strong neuroscience background. He's been a researcher at Harvard and Stanford doing meditation research. And he's traveled the Himalayas measuring the brains of monks. He's a computer programmer. He's developed a really great app that's out in the marketplace right now called, is it called BrainBot?
Sunlight? Sunlight,
the Sunlight app, and the company is called BrainBot. And you guys should definitely Google that and check that out. And Shilo has, I wish our projector worked because her art is incredible. It's been featured all over the world. She has an amazing TED Talk that you should check out, talking about her art and her process. And these two have come together to build an incredible project that is designed to use technology to facilitate human connection in a really meaningful way. So I'm going to give them a few minutes up here to talk about what they're doing.
Thank you, Mikey. Hey guys, that was a really great introduction. So as Mikey said, my background's in neuroscience, but what we've been doing recently is trying to find ways to use technology to facilitate something like meditation, what it does. So we've done that through this app, which uses a NeuroSky headset. That's our first kind of thing. And we're also building a small Lotus that's kind of made out of brass and a wearable device. But I'll let Shilo kind of talk about some of the projects we're working on.
So I actually started off as a children's book illustrator, and at some point or another I started to work with a lot of Indian mythology. And a lot of what I realized was actually it was in some sense transformative technology as well. And when I started to look around me, I live in Bangalore in the south of India, when I started to look around me, I started to look at how a lot of actually rituals in India were transformative tools and technologies in their own way. And when I look at a lot of modern technology, I would find that there was no space for it to be beautiful or actually help enable human connection in a deep or meaningful way. And I started to think a little bit about how all of those things, like the lines that my grandmother would put on her forehead, or the mandalas that she would make outside of our home every day, how all of those things would come together with technology in interesting ways. So one of the projects that we've been working on is something called the Lotus. Maybe you should talk a little bit about the technology?
Sure, yeah. So the Lotus is essentially, actually Luke was talking about the Pomodoro Technique. So it's just an egg timer. It kind of goes for 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, and it dings. It's a chance if you're sitting at your computer, say.
Hold that mic closer.
Sure. So basically, Luke was talking about the Pomodoro Technique. Hopefully everyone can hear me now. So basically, the Pomodoro Technique essentially works as a timer. Goes on for 15 minutes, say, and then at the end of 15 minutes, it dings. You take a break. Maybe use that to meditate, whatever. We're kind of doing a similar thing, but using something beautiful, which is the metaphor of the lotus. So we've worked with a bunch of artisanal, traditional idol manufacturers who live in India. And so it's this beautiful brass lotus, basically sits on your desk. It's about 6, maybe 8 inches tall. And as you meditate with it, it uses a biosensor, either an EEG device or your heart, to kind of bloom when you're feeling calm or relaxed. And over time, that flower will close. So the closing is almost like the Pomodoro Technique, in that when it closes, it acts as a kind of just a reminder to meditate. And
what's also, for me, what's really exciting about it is that in India, we've always had this idea that physical objects could reflect inner states. Idols in temples, for example, made out of brass, you go there, you sit down, and this idol is somehow supposed to be a reflection of what's going on inside of your heart or mind or body. But now we can actually create these things. So when we've been making it, a lot of the work that we've been doing is with traditional artisans who have traditionally made those idols, but we're bringing that ancient idea to life using technology. Also, what it does is it becomes into a visual cue of sorts. So as you're meditating, it's a certain color. If you've gotten really deep into your meditation, so say purple, that's a good color with deep meditation. and it's yellow if you haven't done so well today. And so you actually, over time, then start to learn how to control those colors. And yeah, that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is also that it's social. Some of you should think of that a little bit.
Sure, so you can connect your Lotus with other people, and our apps work in similar ways. And speaking of social, where Mikey was talking about our Burning Man installation, so I wanted to introduce Luke, who's helping out with some of that. That's actually a large-scale version of the Lotus, which is going to be like 15 feet tall in the desert. So just let you introduce all of that.
Sure.
So yeah, basically using the it's going to be blood oxidation and blood oxygen level and pulse, right? So Rohan did a bunch of research on this, which you should talk a bit more about in a minute. We're going to make a big sculpture in the desert. We're thinking about 50% larger than this for each leaf of a lotus, with 10 leaves per lotus and as many as we can fit in our budget. Original target is 25. We'll see how that goes. But basically giant things that light up and respond to the synchronization or lack thereof of people's pulses together. And yeah, we'll be at Burning Man this year. If anyone wants to do some welding or let us borrow some high brightness LEDs, we're basically going to spend our entire budget on the metal and the LEDs. And Rohan, you should mention a little more about the science.
I can kind of describe it. How it's going to work is it's going to be this oasis of sorts of these huge, giant lotus flowers. So for us, it became interesting to see that apart from creating this very useful product, how could we also bring it back into just creating art and experiential, beautiful experiential things. So how it works is it's this huge oasis of big lotus flowers, and there are stems that come down and a big pad at the bottom, and you sit down and you put your finger to the stem, and as it has a pulse sensor on it. So as you do that, the lotus in the sky starts to beat with your heart. And Rohan's been doing a lot of kind of reading and research about syncing up and biorhythm syncing up, and how lovers, when they spend enough time with each other, their heart rates actually start to sync up. So the larger kind of hypothesis there is, if we can bring a bunch of people together and have their heartbeats projected into the sky, do you think we'd be able to sync up? So yeah, that's kind of what we're doing there.
Yeah, I mean, so just in the vein of why is this useful and why are we talking about it now, this is all kind of using technology to interface and have consciousness. And the circuits that we're building, whether it's in this wearable device that we're kind of developing, whether it's on these huge flowers, I think it's really an interesting time to use technology both for building empathy and also for building conflict. So yeah, thanks. If anyone has any questions or wants to help out in any way, we're building the Burning Man installation now, and we're also looking for funding. We just started raising a little bit for the wearable device. So yes.
So what's your name again?
So my name is Rohan Dixit, and I work with BrainBot, which is the name of our company.
I'm Shilo Shiv Suleman.
And Luke Eisman. Probably easiest is to just go to brainbot.be, right? And then you can find everything from there.
BRAINBOT.
Yep.
Has this ever been attempted before?
Has which part of it?
Describing. This merging of
Art, technology, and
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting things that it's very recent, but just happened even last year, was a UC Davis study that came out that, as Shilo was alluding to, showed that people who had been in a long-term relationship who sat across from each other and just looked at each other in silence actually had their heart rates, or rather a measure derived from their heart rate, sync up in a way that was very interesting and hadn't been seen before. It was called, I think, oscillatory dyadic coupling in the paper, which is a really long phrase. But yeah, it seems that now taking that from the research kind of field, which is pretty recent in itself, and throwing it out into the world and seeing what happens is a fun thing to do. So that's kind of where we're at. But no, I don't think this has been exactly done before. Although Mikey actually last year at Burning Man did an interesting project that also used heart syncing with also some kind of audiovisual feedback. So there's some projects out there that are kind of starting to get at this.
Again, for me, what becomes really exciting is that these ideas have always existed, right? There's always been a lot of Sufi poetry, for example, about the heart and the lotus and all of that, but now it feels like we're actually bringing these ideas to life. So yeah, I think that's really exciting for me.
What was the name of your first app that you mentioned, and what kind of sensors do you use to detect users?
Yeah, we're using a NeuroSky. So the name of the app is Sunlight Meditation. It's on the App Store. It's iOS only for now, but hopefully we'll add other biosensors soon. It's an experiment in progress. It actually got started with a trip to the Himalayas. I talked a little bit about this at a previous Hacking Consciousness meetup, but like Mickey said, my background's in neuroscience, but I quit my job and took a bunch of brainwave equipment with me in my backpack and lived with monks for like 9 months in the Himalayas, meditating and recording the brainwaves. And so that's kind of where a lot of this came from.
So what is NeuroSky? What kind of like feedback does it give you?
Yeah, so within the app, basically the NeuroSky is measuring in real time from a single sensor your EEG. So it does a fairly good job with that. It's kind of like somewhere between a toy and like a really good commercial EEG device. But basically what we kind of added to the NeuroSky, which I think was interesting, is this kind of idea of virtual meditation instructor. So basically, I think someone actually mentioned this explicitly. Essentially what we do is monitor your attention in real time. And if we notice that your mind is wandering over 5, 6, 7 seconds, the app will actually say something. A meditation instructor's voice comes through and says something like, come back to your breath. So that kind of real-time feedback is one of the applications that you can build with this type of technology.
Cool. Are there any other questions, Frank?
So what part of the EEG do you measure to notice that your mind is wandering? Theta waves or what?
Sure. So actually, Luke mentioned machine learning. So again, it's kind of related to this. So the NeuroSky itself, if you guys have hacked around with it, has a built-in attention and meditation kind of sense, eSense I think it's called. So that does a kind of fairly okay job of doing it. But I published a paper, this was maybe 2012, in the AAAI, which is the big AI conference at Stanford, in the spring, looking at the monk data set that I collected in India and using machine learning essentially to take the brainwaves. It's a little bit technical, but kind of break it apart into frequency components and feed that into a classifier to do some sort of classification. Are you meditating or is your mind wandering?
And now remember you told me that before.
Right.
Thanks.
Cool. Maybe one. Are there any other questions? Maybe 1 or 2 last questions. Good question.
Yeah.
From your research, what are the core components of meditation? I ask is because I'm a newbie to meditation. I know theoretically that it works, and I've seen it work in people, but I've always tried to sit down and try to meditate for myself, and I can't get there. But I've had meditative experiences like driving or washing the dishes or something like that. So what is it? I guess I'm asking what is my missing piece, but in sort of term that could be universal understanding.
Right. Chad, do you want to? Jill has a very deep knowledge of this sort of thing. But I think your question is kind of what are the components of meditation and what do you searching for and resonating for?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different types of meditation. So it's maybe a longer conversation, but I think one kind of nice thing to start with is how you're feeling in your body and kind of just getting a base level of comfort such that you can do attentional training practices. And that, I think, can lead to other things as well. But we can definitely talk. We started this discussion, I think, a couple days ago, so we'll finish it.
Okay.
I think, Luke, did you have a question?
Yeah, just a dumb question, but does it work only with the NeuroSky, or do you have a version of the app that does some of the meditation instruction somehow gets feedback without that device?
That's a great question. So right now it only works with the NeuroSky. We'll probably have the Muse. We just got our development headset. I think heart rate is something that we're kind of moving towards, just because, as you said, it's a really well understood phenomenon. For example, heart rate variability. It's just a really simple metric that has been studied for like 50 years. And even coming from a research background and kind of applying these things in the real world, things just break. It doesn't work well. So I think longer term, especially with the wearable device, we're going towards HRV as the input.
Cool. All right. Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Luke.